Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'll be showing you how to sew a simple corset top. In the last video, I showed you the drafting process. I showed you how to draft a basic corset pattern. So in this one, I'll be showing you the sewing process. If this is something you'd like to know more about, keep on watching. So I went ahead to cut my pattern on fabric. I cut them on fold and I added the necessary allowance. On the center front here, I have my center front on fold. Then I added ½ inch round my fabric like that. I added ½ inch round the pattern. I have my side seam allowance there. And on the back as well, I have my seam allowance and I added ½ inch round the pattern. I added ½ inch round. And on my cups as well, I added ½ inch round my cups like that. So I ironed interfacing on the wrong side of my fabric, and I also cut out my lining pieces as well. So the first thing I'll do now is to join my front pieces together. I'm going to remove my pattern paper. So I'll be joining the front pieces together, the 3 pieces at the front. So I'm going to open that up and I'll be joining with my ½ inch allowance. I'm going to place that on each other and I'll be joining with my ½ inch allowance. And on the back as well, I'm going to remove my pattern paper from my back and I'll be joining that with my ½ inch allowance. I'll be joining the dot line like that. I'll place them right side facing each other and I'll be joining that with my ½ inch allowance. So make sure you pin them down so you won't be mixing them up. So I'll go ahead and stitch that. So this is it after I was done stitching and I pressed my seam opened, as you can see. I'm going to set that aside and I'll work on the cups now. So I'll be joining my C1 to C2. So I'm going to remove my pattern paper from that. So I'm going to place them right side facing each other like this. And I'm going to pin that down. And I'll be stitching with my ½ inch allowance. I'll do that to the second cup as well. I'll sew that with my ½ inch allowance. So I'm gonna ahead to stitch that and I've ironed my seam open, as you can see. So the next thing is to add the pad to the cups. So I've gone ahead to cut my pad. I used brown foam here. So I cut the pad exactly like my pattern paper. I did not add any sewing allowance to that at all. As you can see, I cut it exactly as the pattern paper. So I'll be joining them together now. So I don't have a machine that does a zigzag stitch, so I'll be making use of my hand needle to join my cups. If you have a machine that does a zigzag stitch, you can easily use that. So I just want to show you another technique on how you can join your cups. So all I'm going to do is to place my cup side by side. Make sure it's not overlapping. As you can see, then I'll just keep sewing with my needle and thread. Just watch the way I'm doing it. I'll just be joining that with my needle and thread like that. I'll keep joining until I get to the down parts. So when I'm done with this one, I'll do the same thing to the other cups as well. So this is it after I was done. So what I'll do now is to place this inside my fabric. I'll make sure the center line are aligning. So I'll be placing my hemming gum in between the fabric and the cup like this. I'll be using my iron to press that down. With the head of my hemming gum, I'm going to be placing that, making sure the center line is aligning with the center of the fabric as well. So I will iron that. I will iron my cup to the fabric. So I'll iron that like that, and I'll make sure I have 1/2 inch round the cup. So this is it after I was done ironing. So you can see how beautiful our cups are looking now. So I'm going to set that aside, and I'll be working on the boning casing. I'll be working on the boning casing now. So I went ahead to cut a satin of about 1.5 inches in width. So I ironed it in 1/2 inch twice, like that. I pressed that down 1/2 inch twice. So this is what I'm going to be using for my boning casing. I'll be making use of a 1/2 inch boning. So I'm going to be placing one at the middle point there, and I'm going to be adding another at the part where I joined the front there, like that. So I'm going to place them there on both sides, like that. And I'm going to stitch that on both sides of the line, like that. I'll do the same thing for the other side as well, and on the back as well. I'm going to add one at the line that I joined there. So this is it after I was done joining. I'm gonna need to fix my boning casing, as you can see. I did the same thing to the back as well. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to join my cups to the bodice. So I'm going to place them. I'll make sure the center of the cup is aligning with the center of the bodice, like that. I'm going to pin that down, and I'll sew that round the bodice, like that. So make sure you use your pins. Make sure you pin them down. So you're going to sew that round the bodice, like that. So this is it. This is it after I was done sewing. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to join the sides. I'm going to join the front to the back with my 1 inch side seam allowance. I'm going to pin that down, and I'll stitch it with my 1 inch allowance. So this is it after I was done joining. I've joined my side seam and I've ironed my seam open. So what I'll do next is to place my boning into my boning case. So what I'll do is to measure what I have there. So I have 9 inches there. All I'm going to do is to remove 1 inch from the 9 inches. That will be 8 inches. So the 1 inch I removed is to join my lining to the upper part and to the down part. So that is why I removed 1 inch there. So all I'll do now is to use my masking tape to cover the boning at the top and at the down part. So I'll just use my masking tape to cover that, to cover the sharp edge there. So I'm going to impute that. I'm going to put that into the boning casing, like that. So fix that into the boning case, like that. Making sure I leave 1/2 inch allowance at the top and at the bottom. So I'm going to do that to all the boning channel I created. I'm going to be fixing my boning the way I did for the first one. I'm going to be adding my boning to all the boning cases. So this is it after I was done. So I've added my boning to all the channels. So the next thing I'll do now is to fix my loops. I'll be adding my loops to my top now. I'll be adding the loops to the back now. So I went ahead to cut a long strip of fabric of about 1.5 inches in width. Then I fold that in 1/2 inch twice, and I made a stitch on that. So this is it, the final result. So I'm going to cut out 3 inches like this for my loop. I'll be cutting that 3 inches. I'll cut as much as I can. I'll keep on cutting 3 inches. So all I'm going to do now is to start fixing that on the back pattern. So the first thing I did was to leave 1/2 inch allowance at the top, and I left 1/2 inch allowance at the back. This is to join my lining pieces. Then from that point, I'll start fixing my loops like that, making sure I have 1 inch allowance in between my loops like that. I'll make sure I have 1 inch allowance in between them. So I'm going to pin that down till I get to the down part, and I'll go ahead to stitch that down with my sewing machine. And I'll do the same thing to the other side as well. So this is it. I've gone ahead to add my loops like that. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to add my lining. So everything I did to the main fabric, I did that to the lining pieces as well. I joined my lining pieces. So what I'll do now is to place them right side facing each other. I'll place my lining right side facing each other. Then I'll go ahead to stitch the neckline with my 1/2 inch allowance. I'll go ahead to stitch the upper parts. So this is it after I was done stitching my lining. And I went ahead to top stitch the fabric to the lining, and I iron it with my hemming gum so that the lining will not be sticking out of the fabric. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to join the sides. I'm going to place my lining like that, and I'm going to be stitching the sides with my 1/2 inch allowance. Stitch that, making sure my loops are inside. I'm going to stitch that with my 1/2 inch allowance, and I will stitch the down part as well with my 1/2 inch allowance. So I've gone ahead to do that. I've stitched my fabric to lining with my 1/2 inch allowance. So to turn it to the right side now, all I did was to open up. I loosed some inches from my lining. At the side seam area, I opened up some inches there. So I'm going to turn it to the right side through the opening I created at the lining. Make sure you open yours too at the lining area, at the side seam of the lining. So this is it. I've turned it to the right side. So all I'm going to do now is to go ahead and give it a good press. And I'll stitch the side I opened. I'm going to stitch it with my hand needle. Then I'm going to give it a good press. And that will be all for this top. So this is it after I was done ironing. You can see how neat everything is looking. And I've stitched my lining back. So that will be all. And I made this long rope here. I'm going to be passing that through the loop like that, and that will be all. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please do not forget to like, share and subscribe to my channel, and click on your post notification so you'll be notified each time I upload a new video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.